Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today we're talking about trust. Specifically, why do so many queer people not trust their own attraction? Time and time again, I hear from people on this channel, in conversation in general, in comments everywhere on social media. How do I know who I am? How do I know what label to take? How do I know what I'm attracted to? How am I sure that I'm not this, or this? Or questioning people who are saying they have this label in their lives, and other people are like, how do you know? And sometimes those questions of how do you know are people asking for their own information because they want to know for themselves and they're not sure how to know for themselves. They want to know how someone else can be sure, right? The assumption that someone is not sure, or the assumption that someone has to be sure in order to live into an attraction or talk about an attraction or to feel an attraction, is rooted in heteronormativity. Taking it back for a minute, heteronormativity is the assumption that the default setting for a human being is heterosexual. The default setting for a human being is straight, and anybody who is not straight is not normal. That's why understanding that definition is important, because that leads us into the reason why straight people don't have to come out and people who are not straight have to announce their not straightness. They have to explain it in some way. Here's how you know when your assumed default setting is something, right? When you are telling a story about someone, if you are giving qualifiers about that person that are not actually integral to the story, but you are giving them as qualifiers to point out and identify the person, you are naming something that is different from what you assume the default to be across the board. Is that the only way you know something is the default? No. But that is a great indicator. When you grow up in a culture that assumes straightness and you are not straight, often you are taught that straight is good and anything else is bad. Is it always over? No. It is a lot though. It is pretty often, even now. This is a weird discourse that happens specifically in the queer community, that we don't need to have these coming out stories and how it's hard for people to come out to their families and that sort of thing, because that's not a thing anymore. And it is, it is still a thing. There are still so many people who are so completely and totally homophobic that they are kicking their children out. They're removing young adults and adults from their lives when they find out who they are. It is still very difficult to come out to your family or to friends. People are still losing people from their lives for coming out. And as long as that's happening, we still need coming out stories. This might be a very side quest heavy video. Whether it's overtly taught that being part of the queer community is dangerous, or it is just taught in general that being different is dangerous or wrong, you still get the message that being different is wrong. Conformity is prized in most societies for children. And even as they get older, we can make an argument that standing out is important, but it's standing out within conformity. You should be the best in these areas that we give you to be the best in. But if you're the best in some obscure area that doesn't fit our narrative, we don't actually, as a society, care that much about that, right? If you're the best student in school, you're the valedictorian, we praise that. If you're the best dungeon master in your state and everyone who plays Dungeons and Dragons absolutely loves you and wants you to DM their games, that is not praised in general society. The way that being valedictorian is. It is in circles, it's not as a whole, right? It's still the best. You're still the best. Conformity is still important. You can be the best, but only in these arenas. So the message of conformity being essential if you want acceptance is drilled into people from a young age. Think about kids going to and from recess at school. They are supposed to be in a line. They have to be quiet. They have to act like the rest of the kids in their line. And if they do not, they're compared to the good kids in their line. Ugh, I can't believe I said that out loud. The kids who are behaving and following the rules are seen as the models in class, and they're praised in order to motivate the other kids to behave like them. Like, conformity is baked in to what we expect from people. And the other side of that then is, if you do not conform, that is bad. And yeah, there is a morality assigned to it, because there is a premium on conformity, which makes it good. It gives acceptance, it gives safety, it gives love, it gives praise. So the other side has to be bad. It has to be the negative. So that message isn't just going to go away just because you accept yourself. So say you grow up in a heteronormative household, you understand yourself to be not straight, you tell your family, put a pin in how they respond, because this really isn't about how they respond anyway, but you tell your family and you've accepted this about yourself and want to no longer live pretending to be straight. Those assumptions that this you is bad, that default setting doesn't just go away. Think about what we've talked about on this channel about purity culture, right? When you tell somebody that
sex is bad,
thoughts are wrong,
that's evil, get it out of your head.
You're evil if you think it,
Tempt somebody.
All of those things that we teach kids, like save it for marriage, we expect that to all go away on the wedding night. And like, at what point are you actually married? Like, at what point are those thoughts acceptable? Like, that's not a switch that just flips on the wedding night and then are fine to want to have sex and have those thoughts. Like, that's still in you. This is the same thing. The brain does not just flip a switch and change how it has been thinking about something for your whole life. How you have trained your brain sticks with you until you retrain it. That is how the brain works. So when you're taught to conform for survival, going against that conformity goes against your instinct for survival. That gets tiring. That gets difficult. The work to be who you are can sometimes feel like more work than pretending. That is the reality. In the end, is it a better option? Yes, for most people it is. Because once you've retrained your brain, once you have figured out how to let go of those messages, once you have been able to self-actualize fully, the freedom on that side of it, that joy on the other side of it is worth it. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend like there's not work to be done to get there. That also brings us to the big S, which is shame. I don't think people are aware of how often we use shame in our everyday lives. Like, the vast majority of things that we say to other people that are harsh or mean are actually shame-based. Like, think about if you're watching this and you have a child and you've ever used words to create an emotion in your child, to create an action. Is there an instance that wasn't shame-based? And I'm not coming for you here, so don't come for me. I'm just saying, like, that is how we're taught to do things. When we're in an argument with our partners or with a friend even, if you're feeling hurt or you're feeling judged, the instinct is to turn it around on them and to say something to make them feel bad. It's something to make them stop and think, or our instinct is to like hurt them back. And usually it is something that is designed to shame them, to make them feel ashamed, to make them feel embarrassed, to make them feel like they've done something wrong. All of that is shame-based. The vast majority of things that we feel badly about is shame-based. As humans, we do have this like imperative to have acceptance. We're social creatures, and that social imperative is skewed right now. Yes, because when I say we're social creatures, I get this like look from some people, right? Like, I hate people, and I get it, I do, but there's a lot of layers to that, and that's not this video. Inherently, we are social creatures. We need some sort of connection, some sort of vibing with other people. We need to be in community with people, and that looks different to different people for sure, but there is this like imperative in us to do that. That's why humans got together and created groups and then villages and then towns and cities and civilizations. Like, that's why that happened, was because that was something in us that needed that. And shame is a part of that, where we are motivated to continue to be accepted. So if we don't feel shame, then we're accepted. And if we do feel shame, then we're not. So if there's something we're ashamed of, like if there's something about us that we're taught is wrong, we'll potentially feel shame about it and then not do it and then have the community that we had before. Is that making sense? So the shame component comes up in the question of like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm not actually this person? What if I, as a woman, don't actually like women? What if as a man, I don't actually like men? What if as a bisexual person, I don't have to like more than one gender? Like, there's so many ways that can kind of fit in, but it really does come back down to, what if I'm wrong? Like, what does that mean? And that does come from a place of shame, either of potentially feeling shame because you were wrong, or feeling shame in what you're thinking about, how you're feeling about your attraction because you've been taught that it's wrong. But that question of like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm not really this person? What if this is not how I identify myself in 6 months to a year? That question presupposes that being not straight is bad, because that's the only way that wrong is shameful. That question comes up for parents too, of the younger people who come out to them. They're like,
don't take a label yet.
You know,
what if you don't feel that way in a couple of years? And
they feel like they're being supportive. They think they're being supportive. I want to think that they think they're being supportive. That is one of the least supportive things that you can say, because you are, first of all, not going to say that to someone who says that they like someone and that would be a straight relationship, right? You're not going to tell your daughter who comes home from school saying that she's dating this boy in her class, well, why don't you like not label that right now because you might not want to date boys in a couple of years? You don't say that to her, but you would say that to your daughter who comes home and says she's dating a girl in her class. Why? Why do you say that? Those messages, the reason why you say that is the same reason why adults who are trying to figure out who they are concerned about the idea that they might not feel that way about not being straight in a month, 3 months, 6 months to a year. It all comes down to the assumption that being straight is the default and there is something abnormal about not being straight. If we could just let go of the assumption that the default setting for a human being is to be straight, it would not be so difficult to accept your attraction. Not saying it wouldn't be difficult. I'm saying it wouldn't be so difficult, because so much of that confusion of like, who am I, is rooted in the, I think it's bad to be this. That is always my question for people when they're asking, like, how do I know if I am? I will constantly turn that question around and say, why would it be bad if you are? Like, why are you questioning if you are? What are you worried about? What are you assuming would be wrong with it? Because that is usually going to be your answer as to what you're afraid will happen if you're not, right? The what if I'm not question is the wrong question, but it's an understandable question to get to when so many people around you and a pervasive attitude societally is, this is probably not your best bet if you want to be acceptable, if you want to not have to be cautious in holding your partner's hand, if you want to know that you're not going to be shunned by family members or friends, if you don't have to worry about any of that, then just go with the default. Why don't we just stop assuming there's a default? This plays out in relationships too, because when you have people who are still working through their like heteronormative assumptions about themselves, they often look to their partners for that validation. Like, this is who I am, this is good, this is okay, I can be this person. But your partner can't validate that in you. Like, no partner can. Your partner can't be your validation. That's too much pressure to put on another human. And when you have two people who've had these messages their whole lives coming together in a relationship, it would be almost impossible for them to do that for each other anyway, even if it was possible for a human to be that validation for their partner, because they're looking for each other to calm those insecurities. How are you going to calm that for someone if you can't do it for yourself, you know? But it becomes this like push-pull in a relationship where if that person doesn't show up for you in the way that you need them to, then you're doubting yourself, which feels like doubting the relationship, which then reads to them like you're doubting the relationship, which leads to more problems in the relationship, which then to the person who started the doubting is like, oh, see, look, I had a reason to doubt. Self-fulfilling prophecy, and the relationship is in even more trouble because you're looking for the relationship to feel right, to show me that I made the right decision, to affirm what I am afraid isn't true. And a relationship can't do that. A person can't do that for you. Like, that is something that's inside work. That's something you have to do for yourself. Because we live in a heteronormative world, that does necessitate support, whether it's therapy or peer groups or friends who have done it, you know, some sort of community support with other people who are further along in the process than you, some sort of support. But muscling through it on your own usually isn't going to work. And if it does work, it's way harder than it needs to be, because you're essentially reinventing things that people have already done and worked out and can help you do. So there you have it. The very complicated, but also very simple reason why so many people within the queer community do not trust their own attraction. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing is knowledge that it's happening. And the second thing is, when you have that question, is this really me? Is this really what I want? If it is outside of just checking in with yourself and making sure you're doing something you want to do, ask yourself why you're asking. What would be so bad if you were wrong? What does wrong even mean? And how would you know if you were wrong? That's another great question. How would you know? Like, what would have to happen for you to know that you're wrong? Another reason so many people question their attraction is because they've already felt like they've been wrong one other time, at least, because they thought they were straight at one point and then they weren't. And they know what that feels like and they don't want to do it again. Understandable. Don't want to put your life into upheaval again. But the reason it's so much upheaval to go from being straight to being not straight is because you're in this heteronormative society. You're not in a queer normative society. It is not going to impact the same way. That's a fair fear. I can understand why that would exist, but it doesn't change the fact that the fear comes from the assumption that this change is like a bad change. It's an assumption that doing this takes me out of normal society, which is internalized homophobia. Like, that fear is understandable, but you have to be aware of where it comes from. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.